Hey everybody and welcome back. Okay, so when we draw in AutoCAD, a lot of times what we're drawing are objects like furniture or light fixtures. And these objects are usually drawn with multiple lines, and it's much easier to move these objects or copy these objects if they are essentially glued together instead of being single lines. So we call this blocking in AutoCAD, the gluing together of lines. So let's draw a simple chair together so that we have an object that we can use and demonstrate with block. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to line in AutoCAD. I'll do my best to go slow through this process so that you can follow along easily, but just know that if you need to pause the video and repeat, you are more than welcome to do that. All right, specify the first point. We're going to click right here, and I'm going to go to the right, and we're going to go 24 inches. With 24 inches drawn, I'm going to go straight up 20 inches. I'm going to come back to the left 24 inches. And then I'm going to go back down till I hit that exact same first point that I started drawing. Hit escape to end the line command. So you should have a small little mini rectangle right here. This is a great start. So we're looking down on the chair as if it's in floor plan view, and this is the seat of the chair. Now I kind of don't want my chair to be super square, so I'm going to go ahead and taper the back of this chair. I'm going to do that by taking this line and moving it over 1 inch. So if I kind of do this and type 1 inch, you'll notice that it actually doesn't follow that line like it was supposed to. It actually goes up 1 inch. So I'm going to grab this little grip and bring it back down to the corner. So let's create a construction line that we can temporarily mark where that 1 inch is going to be, and that will help us move this line much easier. So I'm going to use the line command. I'm going to hover my mouse over this corner. I have not clicked on it. And then I'm slowly going to go over to the left until I can see that green extension line. Remember, this is controlled by the Pac-Man button down at the very bottom, the polar tracking. Go ahead, and once you have that extension line, type 1 for 1 inch, hit enter, and your line will start 1 inch away from that corner. And just go ahead and draw a line straight up, and this is helping us mark where 1 inch is. Now I can take this side line that we drew in the rectangle, I can grab this grip and I can move it over to that spot right there. So this is what it should now look like. I'm going to hit escape on the keyboard, and we don't need this construction line anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Now I need to do the same thing to the other side. Could I do polar tracking and mark the 1 inch and move it over? Yes, I could, but there's actually an easier way and a quicker way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and delete this line over here on the left side. And I'm going to grab this line, and we're going to choose the mirror command. So click mirror or type mirror. And what we're trying to do is specify the first point of that mirror line. Do you remember that glass that we're trying to draw? That's what we're looking at. I'm going to choose the midpoint of the top line as where my glass is going to start. Now if you can't find the midpoint, it likely means that your O snaps, remember the box within the box down here, it means that midpoint is not checked. So make sure that midpoint is checked, or else you can't see that triangular green grip. Snap it to the triangle and go straight down. You can go as far or as little as you want to. Just go ahead and click. And do we want to erase the source object? Do we want to erase this? No, we do not. So go ahead and click no. And this is what you should have. So that created equal lines on both sides. I'm going to use the trim command to trim these little nubs off because we don't need those anymore. Now I want this chair to have a little bit of an arched back. I don't necessarily want it to be square. I want it to kind of conform to the human body just a little bit. So I'm going to use the arc command. I'm going to first click to the top left corner of our seat. The second click is always how high do you want the arc to go. So maybe somewhere in here. We can eyeball this, you guys. We don't need to make this like perfect by any means. Just eyeball it. And then the third click is to end that arc. That looks pretty good, so I highly suggest you try to get that. If something happens that you place an arc and it's way up here, just remember you can always place it and then adjust as you need to. So just click on that arc and use that grip to bring it straight down again. Again, we're eyeballing. Just make it look something similar to what you see on the screen. Alright, so for this chair, I actually want it to kind of like form from the very front of the chair and then it goes up the back so there's no space or anything in between. So I'm going to take this line and we're going to get rid of it. But I do want to show that there is a thickness to the back. And the best way to show the thickness of an object, especially in plan view, is to use what command? Anybody? Anybody? It's the offset command. So go ahead and click offset, and remember we have to tell it what distance we want to offset first. So I'm going to type 1 for 1 inch, hit enter, and then I'm going to select that arc and I'm going to actually place it inside the chair instead of outside. Remember how it wants you to decide which side of the line you want to place the cloned object? We're going inside, everybody. Go ahead and click to make it stick. And then the last thing that I want to do is I actually want to extend this arc so that the endpoints meet the chair edges. So we're going to use the extend command. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on the end of this arc and the end of this one, and you'll see that it actually extends perfectly. I don't want it to continue extending, so I'm going to hit escape on the keyboard to say I'm done. And then the last thing that I'm seeing is that these are awfully sharp, and it's no fun when you scratch the back of your knees when you're sitting in a chair. So let's make these corners rounded. And what's the best tool to round corners? It's the fillet command. So let's use fillet. And what it's asking for is to select the first object, but always remember it's best to give the radius that you want to work with. So let's type R for radius before we do anything. And let's set it to 3 inches. Let's see what that looks like. So I typed 3 and hit enter. And now it's asking us to select the first object. So I'm going to come down here and select this line, and then I'm going to hover to preview. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That's how I want my chair to look. So let's go ahead and click to make it stick. Let's hit the space bar to repeat that command, and then we can click on the first object and the second because it will remember the radius that you gave it. That looks like a pretty darn good chair. Let's work on how to actually go ahead and block this. Alright, so just a reminder, if you need to modify this chair, move it, copy it, whatever, you have to make sure that every single line is selected and then you can move it. Otherwise, if you don't make sure everything, your parts and pieces will be left behind, and we really don't want that. So we want to block this chair. So to block it, I'm going to make sure it's unselected, and let's go ahead and type the word block. This command is only done through typing. There is no button that I'm aware of that can actually instigate the block command. When you typed block and hit enter, this window pops up. It's called the block definition window. And there's a few things that we need to do in this window. First, let's go ahead and name this chair. So the name is going to help us distinguish between all the other chairs that we could possibly have in our project. It's a good idea to have some kind of system to help you distinguish between chairs. I personally always use the name of the type of furniture that I'm drawing as the first part of the name. So in this case, chair. And then I use either a number or the name of the room that that chair is actually going to be living in as the second part of the name. So in this case, we could say chair 1 or chair dining. I'm going to go ahead and choose, whoops, I had it all caps, chair 1. And don't forget the 1. And that way, if I have multiple chairs in my project, I could have chair 2, chair 3, so on and so forth. All right, so that was the first part. The second part that I want to do is I want to specify the base point. So in this case, the base point is that square grip that you see on objects sometimes that helps you move the entire object without having to use the move command. So I'm going to go ahead and click where it says pick point. If for some reason this is grayed out, it's most likely because specify on screen is checked. I just uncheck that and then choose pick point. Now, where do we want to put this base point? Choose a base point that makes sense for how the object is going to be placed in the drawing. So for example, imagine a sofa. We have a sofa. They are usually positioned with its back against a wall, and a lot of times it's centered on the wall. So placing the base point at the back center of the sofa makes a lot of sense. So I usually do that with furniture. I usually put it in the back and centered on the back. So for this chair, I'm going to go ahead and find that midpoint on that back arc, and I'm going to click. And what happens is AutoCAD has now stored that as the place where that little square grip is going to show up once we are done defining this block. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to tell AutoCAD what objects are actually going to be in this block. So that's where I'm going to come over to where it says objects, and I'm going to choose select objects, that little button. So I'm going to use a green selection box to make sure that everything is inside that green box. And once it looks like every line of that chair is selected, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to say I'm done. And now you can see a little thumbnail in that block definition window that shows me what objects actually have been selected. There are other things for you to look at, but I don't usually change anything else. It's really just those 3 things. And then I go ahead and click OK. And it doesn't look like anything happened, but as soon as you click on that chair, you can see that it highlighted the entire object as 1. And we also have this nifty little base point right here that will allow us to move the object without having to use the move command. So let's go ahead and copy this chair. So have the chair highlighted. Go ahead and place the copy command and select your base point. You could choose anywhere that you want to. Let's just grab it and copy it. And that was so much easier than having to try and select every single line of that chair. Now let's say that you wanted to make changes to this chair. So you go to click on it, but hey, you can't actually edit any of the lines, right? So that is what we use the block editor for. So in order to use that block editor, go ahead and select the block you want to change. You could choose either one of these, it really doesn't matter, just select one, and then right click on the mouse to activate a hidden panel. There you should see the block editor, so go ahead and click on that. You're going to see that the screen changed because model space is now gray and the lines are now black. And look what we also see, that green check mark up in the ribbon. So what kind of mode are we in? Anybody? If you said editing mode, you are correct. So here we can make any changes that we like. The ribbon is actually basically the same and you have access to all the same tools, but now there's just a block editor tab that it opens up to, and that's going to allow you to control the functions of this block. Now I don't usually do a whole lot with that tab when I'm editing because I'm usually just editing a block to change the line work. So let's say that maybe we didn't want these corners to be so pronounced. Maybe we want them to be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to grab each one of those and I'm going to delete them. I'm going to go to the Home tab and I'm going to use the fillet command, R for radius, and let's do 1.5 inches instead of 3. So 1.5, enter. Let's select the first object, select the second one. Okay, that looks a lot better. So let's click on that. There we go. Much more subtle, I guess you can say. Once you have all the changes made to your block, you can either go to block editor and hit save the block, or you can hit close block editor and it will prompt you to save before you actually close. I had hit save, so that's why you didn't see it prompt. But now you can look and see that it actually did make those changes, and it made the changes to the copy of the block. This is another benefit to the block command. If you make multiple copies of a block and you need to change it, you just change it to one object in Block Editor and it updates all the other blocks. That's called working smart instead of hard. So my tip to you is once you draw a piece of furniture or a light fixture, that you go ahead and block it using the steps I gave you. This is how you maintain professional drawings. Every once in a while, you may want a block to return to the original lines, and that is what the explode command is for. Now I'm going to date myself greatly with this reference, but when I was little, I was addicted to Jim Henson's Muppet Show, and there was a character who ran around randomly blowing things up. So when I think of the explode command, I always think of that guy. It actually doesn't blow anything up, but it does tell AutoCAD to unblock a block. So let's grab one of these chairs, and you can either use the explode button up in the ribbon, which is located right above the offset command, or you can type explode using dynamic input. Now it looks like nothing happened, but go ahead and click on that object and you will see that it has returned everything back to the original lines. But notice that it did not affect the other chair. It still remains blocked. So the explode command is going to allow you to explode blocks one at a time. And I feel like that's a good thing, because once exploded and you want to reblock it, you have to go through the entire blocking process again. So if you need to make a change to a block, use the block editor. And if you really just need the object to go back to lines so that you can update a specific instance of that block, or for whatever reason, go ahead and use the explode. That's all I have to show you in this video.